Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Judy and I'm the Running So-and-so. And first of all, welcome back if you are a subscriber, and welcome to my channel if you are a new subscriber or a new viewer. If you're new, do click subscribe and join me on my journey and give me a like. And if you want to give me a comment, please do. I love to get comments, I really do. I've had so many lovely comments and it just makes this journey so much worthwhile. Now, today's first of all, I'm going to apologise for how I look, but how many of you just want to sew on your vlogs but you feel, oh, I can't because I'm not looking all made up and everything? I haven't got time for that. I live on my own because I'm a widow, and I just get on with things, and I just think, right, today I want to do this and this. I haven't got time to put makeup on and do my hair. I just got to get going. So today it is a sew along. I've never done a sew along, so I don't necessarily know if I want to call it a sew along or how I make. You'll see when the title comes up. After I'd finished altering Miriam's dress, we started to look at what Anna was going to wear, and realising that lockdown was going to continue on late and the wedding's on the 24th of April, we decided that we would go for a really simple dress in fabric that we could source easily. Now, I thought I'd be able to get this fabric in the UK, didn't have it anywhere. So I actually brought everything from Atelier Brunette in Paris. I bought the zip, I bought the cotton, and if you ever go on their website you can see that you've got the full colour palette and the full matching range of haberdashery. As I said before, I'm going to say it again, I am not paid for that. So we chose the Zoe dress simply for its feminine lines. Nice. I'm going to hold the line drawing up there so you can see it. It does have pockets in here. This is the front, but I'm not going to put the pockets in. And on the sleeve, I'm going to open it up very slightly and just give it a little tuck on the sleeve, just to give it the tiniest bit of feature. The sleeve fits Anna beautifully. She doesn't actually need anything adding into it. We made up the size 14 in an old sheet of mine, and it fitted. She looked stunning in it. She could have worn the sheet to the wedding, but I don't think Miriam would have been very happy. So I thought I would do a bit of a sew along while I'm doing this. I've washed the fabric and I have ironed the fabric, and I have folded the fabric carefully so that the two selve edges sit on top of each other for measuring the grain line, and that the fold is secure where I've put the fold. Now, I'm very fortunate I've got this lovely cutting out table and I can slide it so that I can get in and out to it quite easily. So I'm going to open out the fabric and I am going to lay on the pattern pieces first and make certain I have got everything right before I take scissors to the fabric. I am not expecting that this will take me long to make. It is a very straightforward dress, and sometimes you have to remember with your sewing that simple can look more elegant than fancy. So you don't need the fanciest dress pattern with all the frills and flounces. Sometimes if you choose a simple pattern in an elegant fabric, you're going to get exactly the same effect. So I'm all cut out. I haven't cut the sleeve out yet, and the reason I haven't cut it out is I want to open it out. But before anybody panics and thinks you've not got much fabric, I've actually got the fold here. So where the camera is stood, I've got nearly 1 metre of fabric to do the sleeves, so I can open them out. I'm not going to open them out too much. You're matching the actual centre of the sleeve. So you get that by folding over here to the two sides. So these two sides here meet. I'm going to put a really sharp line in it. Fold back the fabric so I don't go and cut through it. And I'm going to cut up. I've got to have the camera in this position because I've actually got the light behind me, which is really good. So what I will do now is I'm going to open it up. I know I'm using my dressmaking scissors, but... And I don't want to open it up too far. I just want to open it up a little, like so, so that we've got a little bit of fullness so that we can create a little pleat over the top. And that's how I'm going to do it. But I know for a fact that I do not have enough fabric width where it is at the moment. If I wanted to put any kind of fullness in it and make it a so that it was reversed, so that the fullness was at the top. You'd cut to the top here and you'd open it up the opposite way like so, but then you'd have to reshape the head. Finish the cutting out, so the next thing I need to do are the tailor's tacks. Now, not everybody approves or uses tailor's tacks. I'm very old-fashioned, and on something dark like this, they are excellent. Now, I was actually told that with tailor's tacks, you should actually use the same colour thread as the garment that you are sewing. And because this is a very special garment, that's exactly what I'm going to do. When I do my mother of the bride dress, second time round, I will be using the same colour fabric. So the needle has gone in, and pull it through. Just hold that down. I find tailor's tacks are best done on your cutting out table. You're up over the top of it, or on the ironing board if you've not got a cutting out table. You do a little stitch, making certain you've gone all the way through to the bottom, pulling it back through. Now I've got my finger here so I can see how big the loop is. Nice size loop, and give it a snip. I'm actually going to put, I want some just here at the bottom of the dart. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a hole in the paper and put another one in here. I don't need one here because there's the very sharp corner, so there's no point putting anything there. This can now come out, and this can. And these pins can now come out because we don't need them in. And you literally just pull it through and give it a little pull, and this one's just going to fall off. So now I'm going to put this dart in, and bearing in mind I've got the right side facing. One in here, and then slip it open here, and this is the point to my dart, and then I can grab the point here because this is the wrong side, and pull it up. You know how to do darts. There's a little dart here as well, and I'm going to put the tailor's tack in there. As you can see, it's already been punctured. This time we don't need to do the second dart, the other two tailor's tacks, because there are two little marks here that you can pull the tack up. And I have threaded the overlocker, and I have done my test. I'm going to leave it where it is and see if I can zoom in on it. Hold on a minute, let's turn it the other way around. There we go, can we see that? It's a really good colour match. It's just my standard navy overlock threads. I've gone for a 3-thread narrow overlock. The next thing I need to do is to put the two centre back pieces together, and then I'm going to stitch those up, open them flat, and then I'll get ready to put my zip in. And that's the bit I really want to show you how to do. So I've got the centre back pieces here. I haven't done the dart yet. I will do that when I go to the sewing machine, along with doing the dart on the first piece as well. Now, on some of Lisa Comfort's patterns, she actually suggests that you neaten with an overlock or a zigzag first, and I might actually do that because viscose, it's beautiful to sew with, but boy, it doesn't half fray. So I'm going to just pin these together here, and I'm going to lay them flat one on top of the other, pin them together, remembering that I have a 2.5 centimetre seam allowance. Next up is the zip, and here is the zip. We need a rough idea of how long the zip is. I've actually got quite a long zip here. This is 60 centimetres, and I'm going to stop the zip here before the bottom. And there we go. And I have now just done the sewing sample for the sewing machine, and it's so hard to show you because the colour match, with the colour being exactly the right match for the fabric. Can you see it in there? So this is brilliant. I've got a lovely, lovely, lovely big seam. Now sometimes if you get any kind of ruching in your seam, it's a little tiny bit there, can you see? If you just take your fingers and pinch all the way down the seam, if there's any kind of gathering, it will come out. But in order for that to happen, you have to make certain you have not done a secure knot at the end of your seam, otherwise it won't work. A few days ago when I was doing the zip for this sew along here, I realised that showing you how to do an invisible zip blue on blue was not necessarily the right idea, especially in the early stages of putting in the zip. So what I've done is to set up a little test. Now, I have sewn up the seam, and again I have extended the seam allowance to give myself that 2.5 centimetre seam allowance. You would not believe how easy it is when you've got that extra seam allowance. I haven't neatened it because I'm actually going to undo this seam and put this fabric back for what it is. It's cut out ready to make a mask if anybody wanted one. You lay the zip on top of the seam. You lay it right side. Here's the right side, because here is your little right side. So it's right side to right side. So here is the little tag to pull it down. So you turn it over and you lay it on top of the seam allowance, just below the top here. Now, I do know that there are different ways of putting this zip in. This is my way of doing it, the way I was shown how to do it. I'm not saying that it is the only right way, I'm saying it's another way of doing the invisible zip. Because the invisible zip is closing a seam that has been opened and doesn't have stitching down it, it is very important that the sides of the seam are pulled together. And the most secure way of doing that when you do a zip is to sew the seam up. And this is how this zip is put in, from a sewn up seam. You may feel that there are too many stages for this to try. It's fine, I'm just giving you a different option. And I'm very sorry if I sounded a bit teacher-like there, but I wanted to sort of cover myself. So I've worked around the zips I've got in the house and the bits of fabric, and hopefully now we've got a good example to show you. So you lay the zip on top and you take a pin. I've still not got used to the position of the camera. So the zip is just down from the top here. It needs to be a little bit further, maybe about 1.5 centimetres. Then that would allow you to put your facing on and still have a little opening at the top here for your zip. So securing the zip in place, you then fold the zip back. This is why it's quite tricky. You have a line here on the zip. You have a line here of your seam allowance, and your aim is to get that line to roll over the top of the seam allowance. So you roll it down, you know it's secure there, flip it back and put in a pin that goes, it's a daisy, just underneath the teeth of the zip. Now the zip has moved slightly, so you roll it back, realign it, move the zip down a little bit, and you put in another pin, like so. I'm sorry I'm not using one of my fingers here because it's suffering from age. And fold over again, and you just repeat that all the way down the zip. And you end up putting the pins in about every 2 to 2.5 centimetres. If you're imperial, every inch. If you're a bit like me, you know where you want to put the pin. Gosh, this finger on my left hand is clicking away here. Click, 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 click. So you then have your pins in like so. Then you need to tack, you have to tack along here, or baste, and you baste really close to this zip line. Now, this is the point where it goes over to the blue one, but I want to show you what I've done, because on the blue one, I've actually added an extra pin really close to the teeth of the zip in the position where I'm going to tack. And I've always done this. It's what Lynn, the tutor, told us to do, so I've always done it. And here you go. The pins go like that. At that point, if you've got all those pins down there, you can start. Sometimes if I want to remove the perpendicular pins, I will take one out here, pop it in there, because I know that the zip is in the right place, because I've checked it going down, and take out and put this one here. But on the blue, you will see that because it is a viscose and viscose moves, this is just a standard quilting cotton, it will move. So I have actually got perpendicular pins and I've got horizontal pins. And what you need to do now, once you've pinned it in, as you can see, whoop, here we go, you'll get used to this. I have got my needles here going with the line of the zip, and I've got some going perpendicular. I don't want to take them out just yet. So I'm just going to start in the middle where you can see. So literally you just move your pin out and you tack as close to the side of the zip as you can possibly get, using a very tiny tacking stitch. This is to ensure that the zip lays as close to the actual seam allowance as possible. So what I'm going to do now is, as you can see, I'm going up there. I'm going to pop you on time lapse, and I'm just going to go up and down here just to finish it. Next thing I have to do is to open up the seam, and that is done with a little pair of scissors, and you literally undo the stitching you put in on the sewing machine, but you have to be really careful that you do not snip the fabric. I know it might seem a bit of a cumbersome way of doing this zip, but when I started sewing, the invisible zip was not as popular or as used as much as it is now. I've come back to the zip on this dress for Anna. It's gone in beautifully, but I think it could have a better finish. And the reason being that you have to sew when you're doing a concealed zip as close to this line as possible. And the ideal line of stitching is this dark layer inside the zip. And if I let this roll back, ordinarily it would sew down this line here with no problem. This row of stitching has to be rolled back. Now I'm going to try and sew it with you very slowly. So I'm taking down the speed on my machine and I'm pushing the teeth down, and I'm aiming to sew. Here's the line on my foot, the little line just in here, and I will let it go for a while and I will sew along very slowly with you watching. It's so important. This is why I do the zip in this way. So in essence, you use the first line of stitching that I put in as a tacking line. But this little row of teeth, and please excuse me thinking and trying to talk at the same time, it's not easy. And if I then, when it's come back through, I need it to come through a little bit more, I think I'm going to find that that is really going to do a much better fold close. So I'm actually going to stop at the bottom here. In order to get it to go through, what you do is you actually sew the seam up slightly, secure it up slightly than you want where up, but the zip has got to go below this security thing here, because you can sew past that security thing, and it's when you get to the end of the zip that you have problems. And then you feed the little end of the zip, the little grabby thing, through there, and then you can feed it back up when you've finished, and it does work absolutely perfectly. Just a little bit more security, and of course because the zip was already held in place, just doing an extra line of stitching didn't require anything except me putting it back in the sewing machine and getting out my invisible zipper foot. Oh, there's my invisible zipper foot. Underneath there's invisible zipper foot, so I think they all look fairly similar. You've got these two little ridges for the teeth to lay in, depending on which way around you're going, and from the top it just looks like so. But all the feet look different, but underneath they do the same thing. So I shall get that ironed now. So we're back with the pinning together of the body of the dress. It's literally just, that was some cotton falling off the table. It's on a curved seam, so it is a question of just easing it in. Now, what I tend to do is to put pins in, see how we work, and then just ease the fabric through from there. So on this bit here, that looks okay, and it does just here. Sometimes these things just fall into place, and as I said with my frugal frock, it can depend very much so on the pattern cutting. And Sew Over It, I've never had a problem with any of their patterns. They've all fallen together quite nicely. So we've got this pinned together. I'm now going to go to the sewing machine and I am going to sew these seams together. I think I've got 4 to do. They're all neatened, so I will do those, and then I'm going to just do the facing so I can get that pinned on and sorted tonight. So we've got the back neck facing, which of course has got the extra seam allowance, and we've got the front facing, which is on the fold. This is the right side. There we go. And what I'm going to do here with these is I am going to just do the seams for the facing on the overlocker. We just want a little gentle pleat for a tiny bit of detail, and we've found a little blue button in my box over there that would look perfect on it. So what I'm going to do now is, now I've opened up the zip and I know how, now I've opened up the sleeve and I know how far I want it to open. This is where you use your paper scraps. When I did my pattern cutting course, paper scraps like this were invaluable because you can save a fortune on paper. So I'm going to just take my scrap. Other people may suggest altering in a different way. This is just me. Now I really want this scrap to go over there to collect that, catch that. So it literally is just a question. If you really want to be absolutely certain about the whole thing and not worry about the scraps, you get another piece of paper, lay it underneath, put the cut up pattern on top, stick it down, and then cut out your new one. I couldn't waste like that. I'm becoming more eco-friendly. I'm becoming an eco-Judi. Sleeve over, and I've ironed the position of where I want the fold to be, and I'm literally just going to put some tailor's chalk on using this chalk marker here. Now I know it'll rub off as I go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I do to create the hem on the sleeve before I put the sleeve together. Now, those of you that watched my Frugal Frocks video will see that I did exactly the same thing there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pleat in when the dress is finished. To start with, I'm going to put the sleeve in. But before I put the sleeve in and do the side seams, I'm going to do the hem. I'm not going to sew the hem up. I'm literally just going to iron it in place. Using my hot hemmer, and I can use my hot hemmer horizontally today, and I'm going to turn up 2 centimeters, and I'm going to iron through with my hot hammer up 2 centimeters. I haven't trimmed the ends yet. This is awful, isn't it? I should have trimmed the ends. There we go. Now you will find that if you ever slightly out on your hems and you start to turn them up, they'll sort themselves out beautifully. And then I'm going to turn it up another 2 centimeters, like so. And a nice sharp seam, and I have got the hem marked and in position for the bottom of the sleeves. And I'll show you what I'll do in a minute now. And it's really important that you've got a nice sharp seam at the end with the seam, where the seam is going to go. I've got a rubbish pile out. I need to always have a rubbish pile out. Right, there we go. And you unroll the sleeve, right sides together. Oh, look, there's another one there. Just be neatening. Right sides together, and you can sew up the seam. And I will finish this one off for you. I'll be back in a minute. I'm back. And you've literally just sewn up that hem, that seam. The first thing I'm going to do is to open it out and iron it. I do have a sleeve hem, it's around somewhere. And I just want to do the bottom, so I've opened it up, flapped this bit of the part of the sleeve behind. It's so hard on navy blue to navy blue. I was having a chat with Rachel when we were running, and I said, oh, I'm doing my sew along for the Zoe dress. And she said, how's it going? And I said, well, it's going well, Rachel. But why am I using blue on blue? And your hem seam is there ready. I have got the hem of my sleeve done. It literally just folds back on itself. I have one hem seam, one sleeve, oops, with the hem on, and it's perfect. There you go. Ta-da! It's as simple as that. Literally 2 minutes ironing. And there's none of that trying to turn it up while the sleeve's in the dress or it's sewn up down the side. As long as you've got a really sharp iron seam, sorted. Right, I'm going to do the other one and then I will come back to you. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sleeves in. Now I did talk on my makes video for the frugal frocks about the free arm, so I'm just going to show you what that is again. So I need to remove the extension table. So here is my free arm, and I can get my fingers underneath there. Join my hands. Can I get my fingers to come through the other side? Look, did you see? There's my fingers coming through. There they are. And you see my fingers. And this is your free arm. And this size of this, the smaller the better, because it means you can get some really narrow things through that. You get the cuff of a gentleman's shirt on that. So I have actually put the sleeves in I pinned them in. And I'm going to risk sewing them straight in without tacking them. I'm going to start. Now when I put the sleeves in, you do have to ease them over the sleeve head. I don't use stay stitching because you can pin mark fabric. And if you want to ease them in, you can ease them in, so you have to have the majority of the fabric. You have to tip it away from you. But this one is actually eased in really nicely. So I'm actually going to start at the top. I usually start at the bottom of the sleeve. Let me just trim off here. And I will sew one sleeve in with you watching, and then I will sew one in on my own. And then I will be able to neaten them once I've got them in properly. Just before I start sewing, I'm just going to remind you I'm sewing on today. I've got it on 3.25 length, because that means if I have to take it out, it's easier to see because it's dark on dark, and the holes for the pins are not going to be quite so. So one of the nice things about sewing machines where you've got your hands free, so a lot of sewing machines now have what they call a hand-free device, which means that you've got a knee lift, or they've simply got a button that lifts it up the presser foot. But it does mean that if you get a seam allowance that folds back on its side, it's so easy just to stop the machine, lift it up. I mean, you can do it irrespective, but it just makes life an awful lot easier. And round it goes. Again, slow and steady, and I'm now going to just double check this. I've not got any fabric caught underneath. Don't think I have. I'm just feeling it as I go. What I'm ensuring is I don't get any puckers. But you know, everybody gets a pucker now and again. Now I've got a seam allowance again that I need to just adjust as I come through it. Just as I go into it, I don't want it to go back on itself. Put it down, there it goes. Checking underneath to make certain I'm still nice and smooth. Now normally I would tack a sleeve in, but this one went in so well, I just thought, well, I don't really need to do it. I remember going on a course once and the lady saying to me, you just got to have the confidence to go for it. Don't always tack. But I keep thinking, well, you know, if I tack it, it's likely to go right the first time, and I won't. In the long run, it'll save me time. And it seems to, I'm pretty convinced it's gone round perfectly. We're now back at the beginning. I do like having this differential feed thing. I've had it before. It was on the previous machine as well, the D-feet. I'm sure the machines do it now, not just Bernina. So I'm just going to check this sleeve from the inside. So to check it through, where's it hiding? Here it is. Get it inside there so that you can see as I'm going to go round. I've got a thread there to cut off. Oh, look at that join there underneath the sleeve. How good is that? And all the way round, and this sleeve has been set in, not one little bit of stay stitching, all the way round, and it has worked beautifully. So there's no stay stitching in there, no ease stitching, no nothing. They go in without it. It just makes it easier because it's ease stitching. You can just tug it and the whole thing flips in, but you could get a pucker, you could get a gather. Set-in sleeve should have neither. So if you leave me, I'm going to go and do the other one. I'll see you in a minute. Now then, I really hope that the lighting the way I've got it allows you to see what I'm doing. So I need to just neaten the hem raw edge on the overlocker. I'm going to do a double hem, but just to protect it, I'm going to do the overlocking just to neaten it. I do have a 3 thread still set up on the overlocker. The sleeves are in, and I have just overlocked them with the 3 thread overlocking stitch. 4 would have been fine. but I chose the 3, as I said earlier, because the material is delicate. So I have got 2 sleeves in. I've got the zip the way I want it, which leaves me to finish the neckline. Now, I'm going to show you how I was taught to do the neckline. I need to first of all trim the seam. Now what I'm going to do is to show you this on a small part rather than going through the whole thing. So we were taught to grade seams. Now if this was a thicker fabric, you could trim the seam slightly, but over the years I have discovered that not trimming the seam too much is probably better. So rather than taking it down from the 1.5 centimeters we've got there, you take the inner. So this is when you fold it back over, like so. Oh my gosh, it is so dark with it being blue. When you fold it over to be like that, you want to be trimming the seam allowance that is just underneath this top layer. And if you fold it back, it is this one here. And it is actually, yes, it's actually the one that is the actual dress. So you trim it to half. I'm wondering why I've got a lump, it's the zip. So you trim it to half. I'm not going to trim all the way around, I just want to trim a little bit. This is where you put in your little notches. Don't go as all the way down. And a nice sharp pair of scissors. These are my dressmaking shears. And the notches will help the material to fold as it goes around the bend. We might get some bulk here. So over the seam allowance, you just need to grade that down a little more over the seam allowance. Just by taking off the top bit of the seam allowance. Just the top bit of the seam allowance. Oops. Like so. Here is I am understitching the facing in place, and here's the facing. Now rather than using the sewing machine, which I don't trust, it's just me being a slightly old-fashioned needlewoman, I am doing this by hand and I'm using a back stitch. So here is the back stitch. I want to try and come in very slightly for you. There we go. So to do the back stitch, the needle goes in and I don't want it to come through on the other side. So I'm feeling inside the seam. You saw the needle come out there. I don't want that. And I'm doing a stitch of about 1 centimetre. So I've got nothing on the back. I have gone through the layers of trimmed seam. There's the stitch. Now I've come up and I'm going to go back, but I'm going to pop the needle in literally 2 or 3 millimeters from where the thread has come up, and I'm going to do the same again. Now it is not a quick job, but I know for a fact that the seam won't roll back on itself. So I shall finish that off the camera and come back to you in a minute. But also I've done the rest of it, but here you will see I have got some tacking in, and this tacking will not pin mark, and I will take this out, or tell Anna to take this out just before she wears it. And this is securing the seam. It's forming the fabric into the seam that I want it to form. You can do it with pleats as well. Once you've ironed a pleat in place, you leave it tacked in place, because the longer it's been held in place, the more secure the fold will be. So the other area that you do have to hand sew is this little area down the side of the zip where the facing is tucked in. And again, when you come to go down there, it is just a really, really tiny slip stitch. And what you need to be doing is to be hiding your thread inside the seam that you have there. You need to make certain that you've not come through on the right side, and when your needle comes up, you just channel it inside that seam allowance. My seam allowance is just underneath the pin, and the needle is going to pop out there, pull it through, and then it's just a tiny little stitch onto the zip, just tucked under the seam to go into it, and you're back inside that channel, and that way you will secure it down. Right then, oops, at the top of the dress it needs a hook and eye, but I'm actually going to use a button because I have used these buttons on the sleeves. What I did was literally after we added the fullness into the sleeve, I have literally just added the button, and it is, blessing, it's the Atelier Brunette. It's just a very simple button, a blue button. I now have a selection in stock should I need them, all in the same colourway, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Just some ironing bits there to tweak out. And there's the other one there.